Welcome back to our Black Void. I'll never do that again. Hey, welcome back to our Stupid Reacts of Corbin.
I'm Rick.
And you can follow us on Instagram.
Also known as X. I like
more juicy content.
Juicy.
Thank you to everybody. So it's on Patreon.
Thank
follow
you,
us on official
Patreons.
Twitter account. Subscribe and hit that like button because you're wonderful. And welcome back. Today we're doing a movie review of the highly anticipated Telugu. Well, I think it's everything. I think they filmed it in probably multiple languages. Yeah. Massive sci-fi mythology. Prabhas Deepika Amitabh film that we went to Comic-Con for last year. The teaser for last year. Big budget, high sci-fi movie, first of its kind in India. So we'll be reviewing that. We just got out of the theater, IMAX here, and it's directed by Nag Ashwin, written by Nag Ashwin, and starring Prabhas, Amitabh Bachchan, Kamal Hassan, Deepika. You know who all the people are. Yep. But since this just came out, we will do mostly non-spoilers reviews. If we get into some spoilers, we will tell you before we get there. So, because obviously it just came out, so you can go decide for yourself. But it'll be mostly non-spoilers, and then we will yell spoilers if we want to get to some before that.
Yes.
Rick, your initial thoughts of Kalki 2898 AD.
I think a lot of Indians are going to like it. I think it had accentuating the positive things at the forefront. As far as world creating, I think for the most part they did a very good job with their world creating, and I think they did a very good job with sound design. I think they did a very good job with editing and a lot of the technical aspects. Some things that we can get into in a little bit were underwhelming and not as good as I had hoped it was going to be based on what we had seen in San Diego and what I was anticipating this was going to be. But I do think because of the symbolism and representation of things that are so familiar to so many Indians, I think that it'll have a broad appeal to an Indian audience. I don't know how much of the broad it'll have a broad appeal to anyone outside of that audience.
Gotcha. It was a mixed bag for me. I think there was a lot of positive, but then there's also stuff that I'll get into of those. But in terms of the positive, I think it's great that most of the time you did not have to think about the visuals. They were clearly, most of the time. Yeah, most of the time. I'd say at least 90% of the time you did not have to worry about the visuals, which is great for a high sci-fi fantasy style film that India's really never seen before in terms of going high sci-fi.
Right.
I think it's fantastic that they you didn't really have to think about it, because that's a hurdle that for a long time India has had to get over.
Right. They did a good job world building.
So that's good. The production design I thought was really nice. There was a lot of really cool characters. But there was a lot of characters as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. I think where the film falters for me is I think it might have bit off more than it could chew. I think it almost felt like it wanted to be I'm not comparing it to Hollywood films, but it wanted to be big sci-fi, like big sci-fi Hollywood for India. And I think that felt almost like its main goal a lot of times, as opposed to getting you to really care about these characters. And that, I think the screenplay of this, not the believability of a lot of the Hindu mythology. Actually, a lot of that is some of my favorite parts of the movies. So it's not really the believability in that aspect. It's one, caring for these characters. Like, I don't want anything to happen to this person.
Right.
Why are you doing this?
Right.
And a lot of that did feel almost just flat. It was like, oh, that's just going to happen. Yeah. That's going to happen.
Right.
And so it leads you to be like, oh, okay, I wanted to be more invested in this, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of cool stuff going on. And then there's also elements of, I don't know if, the reason I think they bit off a little more than they could chew a lot of the elements of the world are not fleshed out. Like certain weapons show up. That was where did those come from? Why weren't we using those? Wait, he could just go in there.
Right?
How did where? I thought you were a high technologically advanced civilization, at least the upper, and then like certain characters are like almost superhuman. And then at other times they struggle to pull somebody up, or
exactly. They demonstrate consistent powers that inexplicably are just gone
at times.
Other points. Yeah.
And then like when they could have been useful, and then somebody goes away, and then they rip stuff off, and I'm like, well, why didn't you do that before?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking in terms of like, I feel like instead of going for this massive world, we should have focused a little bit more on the story, because I thought actually the broad element of the story was interesting. I didn't so much care about the intimate, because I didn't feel intimate with any of these characters.
I completely agree, yes. And there was a lot of things in it that were very predictable in terms of the flow of the story. There were moments where I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind I was thinking, okay, so now I'm going to see that, and I saw that. Yeah, so everything you said, I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and I can absolutely see the vision of what they were going for. I think too much of the vision was just, let's make the biggest sci-fi movie India's ever seen.
Yeah, and there were some disengaged folks. I mean, there were in the audience, there were moments that they were cheering for things that were very specific to the Indianness of the film, for
Hindu
sure.
mythology element of it, for sure.
But then there was also lots of times where I saw folks, there was somebody next to me, he checked his phone a lot of times. He yawned at one point. A lot of people were getting up and walking out and then coming back in.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that would probably, and there was a baby crying almost the entire time, bringing like a 3-year-old.
Yeah, somebody brought like a under 3.
Oh boy, guys, don't do that, please.
But they were on the other side of the auditorium, so it really didn't affect us.
I have young children. I get it.
Yeah.
But also, I would never bring them to a 3-hour action movie.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons a lot of, maybe I could just speak more for myself, obviously, is just the disengagement of caring for these characters.
Yeah.
Certain characters, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I wish we could have focused on that element, like the Amitabh Bachchan and Deepika element, without giving anything away.
Obviously, you've seen from the trailers that there's...
their whole kind of story, I was like, cool, we should have fleshed that out more. I think that's cool. Kamal Hassan, I think, has a really cool looking character. I think it was already out. He's in a small minuta amount, without giving anything away. But I like that character, the look of him at least a lot. Amitabh Bachchan, Deepika, I thought could have been fleshed out more, because she was the one that you were supposed to like really care for in terms of be the heart of this. And then there were other elements like Prabhas was where a lot of the comedy come from, and maybe in Telugu it worked more. It didn't work all the time for me with the comedy that they were trying to give Prabhas. Here, sometimes it did, and then even sometimes in like the fights, for as expensive as this movie was, I'm like, I feel like the fight scenes could have been better at times.
I was just thinking
I was like, maybe they put all the money in the world?
The fight sequences very much, it was like, I saw these in Avenger films about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of moments for a film that, for the predominant amount of the film, the world creating was very impressive, because it's so dependent on the visuals. It's a totally, completely fabricated world. It's nothing but a different time and place. There were a couple of instances of CGI that are so subpar, it makes you scratch your head and go, what happened? How do you have such bad CGI in these moments?
Yeah.
Thankfully, they're far and few between.
Yeah, like I said, almost 90% of the movie you don't really like to think about.
But when they do happen, everything else is so good that it makes those bad moments glaringly bad.
Yeah. And there were elements that I'm like, why was that there? Like I feel like
or you just okay.
Oh yeah, all right, cool. I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like, so my biggest takeaway is I saw the vision, but I feel like you bit off a little more than you could chew here, with almost all elements. But I definitely, I don't think it's like, I was never like in a film that we despised in like KGF 2, it was like a big Indian action film. I never felt like that in this film. In terms of like, oh God, can this be over?
No, I never hated anything.
No.
So but it's like, for me, it's a bronze. I saw what they were trying to do. It's a bronze medal. I saw what they were trying to do. Most of the time, a lot of what they were attempting to accomplish was very impressive and of merit. But for me, it's a one and done. And although I will say, because I'm rooting for them, and I really hope they can build on this, I am hoping they can take this to a next level and create another film.
They definitely are.
Yeah, they're making a universe.
And I guess
focusing on story and character development, because there's so many things that happened in this where I was disappointed, like you were, where something happens that's climactic to certain characters, and I wanted to feel it, and I didn't.
And maybe in the next ones, since you don't have to do that, the startup of building the world and getting to know these characters, maybe. Obviously, a lot of, I think we'll get to see a lot more. Hopefully, Kamal in the next one. And I liked Amitabh Bachchan's character. I thought it was cool. I think they need to hone when he can use his powers a little bit, and why he can't at times.
And while Prabhas has a lot of the comedic relief, I will say it fell flat several times. Not just for us. There were points that obviously should have had laughs, and there were none in the auditorium.
There were some. There were definitely some.
There were a couple.
And there's some fun cameos there too.
Yeah.
But I think I basically said like all the songs. There wasn't really that memorable of any song in this, I would say. There was like a fun, I guess, sequence.
And when things turn to comedy, everything's comedy. The music, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. I would almost like wish. I mean, like I said, you in Telugu or Hindi can tell us if the comedy worked more in the language. But I almost wish they didn't have that much comedy in it. Yeah, maybe sprinkles.
It almost felt like, okay, don't be Ragnarok.
Yeah,
just let's get back to the groundedness we've been experiencing for a while.
Like, because Deepika's very grounded, Amitabh Bachchan is very grounded, yes. Kamal is very grounded, and Prabhas a lot of times. But obviously, then when he's doing his comedy, he's obviously doing the jokes and stuff like that, and then. Supporting characters of his also bring in different comedy. I just little of it worked for me in terms of the comedy.
Me too.
Some of it did,
right? But
not a lot. I mean, like I said, maybe that was translation. So you guys can let us know.
I don't think based on the house we were in.
Yeah. We were in a Telugu house, pretty full. I'd say at least 3/4, and it was a big IMAX theater, which is unheard of here. So we had a big crowd and children.
One that was too young.
A couple that were too young, man. Overall, I think it was a nice attempt, but disappointed as well in the fact that I didn't care as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll build on this. I'm a lot more excited for the second one than I am for like whatever if KGF 3 comes out, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm more excited about that element. I'm not like dreading.
What just happened? I didn't move. I didn't touch anything.
I think the
battery surge switch.
Yeah.
Oh, so the sound audio all went just wonky on
terrible.
You. Sorry. That's what happens when we're in the abyss.
So I hope the audio's still working on this. If it's not terrible. But let us know what you thought about the movie. Yeah. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, try not to spoil it for anybody. In the comments, please. We didn't get to spoil it.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Let us know what you thought about the movie. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, and anything else we need to know down below.